Okay, so have any of you taken an online class?
No.
Raise them high. Okay, so how many of you have any of you helped teach an online class? All right, so as a student, what was the first thing you noticed about online learning? Being in an online class. What's something that stuck out to you, your experience?
You're responsible for your own work. And you get it done on time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, can be self-led. Anybody have anything else they want to share about their experience in being an online student?
There's a lot more group work.
Ah,
Really?
interesting.
A lot of group work.
A lot of group work. Very good. Okay, those of you who helped teach an online class, what was your experience?
It was easier.
Easier.
You get a lot of emails from students.
A lot of emails from students, yes. Yes. So what we're going to talk about, there has been a history of online learning that kind of lingers, that is somewhat more of a correspondence theory in learning. Have any of you been exposed to that, where let's say they send out a video, you take a test? Did anybody have a class like that? Okay, that does linger, and we are trying to expand on that theory exponentially, because that is not best case scenario, right? So we're going to talk about best practices and what it means to organize an online class, so that when you guys go into a teaching realm of doing this on your own, you're prepared to do that. Okay, come on in. The more the merrier. Come on in. Are you guys PFF as well?
No.
Or you're faculty?
Yes.
Yay! I mean, I love them all, but I'd like to have a few that are actually going to practice immediately. I'd like to force them into it. Okay, so go ahead and take 3 stickies of each color and then go ahead and sign in. Okay, so we're going to talk about what it means. And this can be a discussion. So if you have thoughts, comments, concerns, questions, feel free to jump in. We'll answer them as we go. We don't have to save them to the end. It's not a big deal. So we're just going to talk about what it means. So, okay, what are the pros of teaching online? The key is, as she said, you take on some of that ownership, right? But that's flexible for students. A lot of students take an online class because it means they have the ability to do so. Maybe they're working full-time, maybe they have kids already, maybe they're bottlenecked in the system and they need to get through, and if there's an online class that allows them the flexibility to do so easily, they're going to jump in and take an online class. One of the problems we're starting to run into at a lot of universities is classroom size, right? We're waiting for these new buildings to come online. What do we do in the meantime to be able to ease those issues? Well, if some of the classes can be online, they can do it in their dorm rooms, in their apartments, wherever they're at, and we're kind of easing, again, how do we make all of this fit and get everybody through, especially as we're starting to see the push more for the 4 years, right? We're trying to do more 4 years, get them in, get them out. But there's flexibility for you as faculty as well. You can teach from the beach. I'm just saying, we're only 4 hours. That's where I would be. Anyway, the other thing is it reaches students in many ways. And what that means is we have some of the things that come into compliance with ADA. We do have Tina Gilbert here with the Office of Accessibility. And so some of the things we're trying to do is infuse ADA compliances up front, right away, before having to rethink those as we're already into the class. The other thing that does is the last one is it broadens the learning format. Many of us learn in different ways, right? We learn kinesthetically, auditory, we learn by visual. So when we put more and more stuff out there in an online environment for them to access in their own ways, people who learn in multiple ways are accessing that information in what best suits them. So we might have a video, we might have audio to a PowerPoint, those kind of things. So we really start to address those things, and it's amazing. Okay, so I'm Betsy Gilbertson. I am with the Biggio Center. I'm an instructional designer that specializes in distance learning, and that means that I have been doing online learning for more than 17 years. So I'm going to tell you, I love online learning today. What we can do now, we used to beat our heads against the wall going, how can we get them to send in a video? Oh, they're gonna have to tape it on a VHS tape and mail it in, and we're gonna have to do this, and then we got an email and back some feedback, and we used to do it. But now they just go into Canvas and they submit a little video and it's done, and I'm like, wow, yay, this is so exciting, guys. You have no idea. So yeah, 17 years of online learning. It's a fabulous realm. It can do some amazing things. There is some fear in what students have to do, being able to learn on their own, being self-led, but you're there behind the scenes as the instructors. This is not a automatic. They don't go in, see the material, answer some stuff, and it's not a MOOC. We're there. We're addressing issues, we're working with them, we're still instructing the class. So, what's most important about putting a class online? Obviously, we need it to be well organized. How many of you have taught the face-to-face classes already in lectures? Absolutely. Okay, so the first time, what was it like when you got all your stuff ready? What was it like to get stuff ready to teach a lecture?
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work. The nice thing is you guys are not far removed from that process, right? When I start to work with faculty who have been lecturing for 20 years and they kind of forget that they've had to put in a lot of work, they aren't quite so prepared to do a lot of work again because lectures worked, right? This is the process. We have all our materials, we've taught this, we revamp a little bit, we might change a book, but we're just editing what we have. So we have to rethink this process, as in we liken it to the exact same thing that we did the very first time we get ready to teach a lecture and have our own class. And we put all the materials together, and there's a lot of work involved, and we're pulling all these pieces together, and there's a lot of upfront work, and we feel exhausted, and that's exactly what it's like to teach online for the first time, even for people who have taught for 20 years. Because that process is the same. We're reinventing the class in a different mode. So, has to be well organized. We're going to think it through. The next thing is, for those of you who took an online class, was it easy to navigate? Was it easy to get through? What format were you guys taking? Was it here? Were you taking it? So what format were you in Canvas? Did you have another format? Blackboard. Okay. So yeah, there's what we call LMSs or CMSs, course management system, learning management systems. Those are the norm, thankfully. Again, 17 years ago, that we had a web course in a box, and we've come so far from that. And the nice thing is all the pieces are there for you. You can utilize all these different components in doing it so that it's easy to navigate, because the first thing you're going to find is students are frustrated if they can't get to where they need to go. One of the things about easy to navigate doesn't mean that it's just laid out. It means we also put our information in multiple places in multiple ways. So if a student thinks a certain way, we think it makes sense, right? Well, I have it laid out in a page. Well, they've taken a class where it's laid out in a module and they can't figure out where this is laid out. But to us, that makes perfect sense, but everyone thinks differently. So the more that we accommodate the different ways we all think, the better off it is. The next is you have to believe it. You have to believe that online learning works and that you want to be doing it, because otherwise your students are going to feel that, even through a computer, because they're going to know, well, they're not buying in, they're not giving me feedback, they're frustrated with whatever issue that I'm having. So we have to love it. I love it. I love online learning. It's amazing stuff. Okay, so how do we begin? If any of you are familiar with some backwards design, I'm actually going to start right here. We're going to look at so how many of you have a course that you can think of that you would be ready to teach? Because you guys have to do micro teachings, right? Those of you that, and some of you are probably already teaching classes. So I want you to think of that course. And what I want you to do is think about what the goals for the course would be. I'm going to have you guys write out some learning objectives, anywhere from 1 to 3 on one of your colors. So pick a yellow or a blue. And the thing I'm going to hand out right now is what we call Bloom's taxonomy. Are you guys familiar with this? And so what I have are the verbs from Bloom's taxonomy, because what we want to do is we want to write them as concrete actions, something somebody can do. So I'm just going to have you pass those on down. There's a couple of them there, and I'm going to do the same. If you just want to pass those down and around. And then we'll throw some in the back here, and you guys can pass those out and around. Hopefully we'll end up with enough. So what I want you to do right now is go ahead and use some of these verbs in writing out a couple of learning objectives that are pertinent to your course. And you're going to do them on, like I said, one color of stickies. So pick a yellow or pick a gold or pick a blue and put all of your learning objectives on one color. 1 to 3, however many you can come up with. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that. Yeah, 3, in at least 1, 3 if you can. Okay, so does everyone have at least 1 to 3 learning objectives that you can utilize? Okay, also right now, I'm just going to let you take one, pass it on down. And the Bloom's taxonomy action verbs that I passed out is actually through Clemson University. They have this out there. So it is online. There's the link if anybody needs it. You can just search it and Google otherwise. And like I said, the nice thing about this is it's built on their little triangle that they have, but it just gives you action verbs that fit and that builds up in the retrospect of being able to do more as it goes. So I just find it very helpful, but it's out there. Feel free to go out and grab it at any point. Okay, so now you have 3 more sticky notes that are another color. What I want you to do is write down what assignments that you use. And what I want you to, and about anywhere from 1 to 3 assignments that you currently would use in a course. And then I want you to think about how important that assignment is and how well that would correlate in an online environment. And does that work? So we need to be able to make this work in an online environment, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about this at the end if we want to discuss about what online assignments look like, or as she said, there's group work, those kind of things. But so talk about what 3 assignments would be, or write down 3 assignments on your other color sticky notes, 1 to 3, however many learning objectives you did. So like I said, think about which ones are vitally important and which ones, if it's vitally important, how well does that correlate into an online environment. So I'm going to give you another 5 or so minutes to go ahead and work through that process. Okay, so once you guys have a learning objective and a assignment or more, on this little blueprint that I handed out to you, what you're going to want to do is put a sticky note that has the learning objective in one box and put the sticky in that has the assignment/assessment in the box that's next to it. And then you're going to take a look at that blueprint and see what all of the other pieces that go into being able to make sure that your students can get what they need for this, right? Do you need sticky notes?
Yeah, I was conserving. I put all 3 objectives on one sticky note.
Oh, okay.
So now I can't separate them.
Oh.
To the best skills of Mary.
Perfect. You can write them, or yeah, you can write them in there. This blueprint is what I have my faculty go through and work through as they start to plan out their course to make sure that we have a learning objective that makes sense. Sometimes that's departmental, sometimes that's course specific, sometimes that's your own. It depends on how you and your department work. And then what assessments and assignments that we have that demonstrate that they can fulfill that learning objective, correct? So we want them to correlate. Now the next pieces are, what content do they need to be able to do the assignment to show their learning objective? The other thing is, how much time does it take? And we're going to get into that in a minute. So does anyone want to share what assignments that you thought of that are vitally important?
So I guess I have to give some background because my course is statistics for the social and behavioral sciences that I decided I might want to teach online someday, hypothetically. So my learning objectives were I want them to be able to compute a t-test and an ANOVA. Another one is compose an APA-style summary of all the descriptive and inferential stats that we learned about. And then the other one was interpret the results of their hypothesis testing. So for the first one, for computing t-test and ANOVA, that's pretty simple, I feel like. So I could, as far as like creating assignments for that.
Don't ask me to do it, but
Right.
sign me
So
I'm so proud of you.
For that assignment, I could have all the students complete an anonymous survey with several of whatever variables I choose, a bunch of different variables, and we could use, as a course, use that survey data for all the statistical tests we're going to do on it in the future. So I get the results of their surveys, it's all anonymized, and then I send it to them in a spreadsheet, and I tell them, okay, conduct a t-test and tell me if these two variables are significantly different from each other, or tell me if these two groups differ on this variable significantly. So that one would be a simple assignment to make. And then for the next assignment, I want them to be able, I want them to compose a summary of those stats. So basically they would just write the results section in an APA style paper, and I would want them to include one table and one figure to summarize their results. And then when it comes to interpreting it, I would just have them write a discussion section of a hypothetical APA paper and make sure that their conclusions are supported by those results.
That's fabulous. One thing you've done is you've utilized the software that's available to you. So you have this survey, you're able to do that. You're also getting buy-in from your students because they're correlating their own data. And they feel that they're participating, right? So it's not just random information, it's us. So that's great because there's several different software out there in the world and here on campus. We have Qualtrics that can do anonymous surveys, and you can also do surveys inside Canvas that can give you information. So you can use two different actual software there. And you've built on the process. So, and you're getting the students to buy into that, and then you're finishing up with the discussion board. So those are some really great examples. Thank you for that. Anybody else?
My course objective is basically I'm looking at the GIS and remote sensing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have is taking one of the concepts in GIS. Okay, that's the objective. And the learning process will be like classroom videos of PT, followed along with some readings, assigned readings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Then next objective is to demonstrate, to solve the real world problems.
Okay.
So in order to get that, there will be hands-on lab exercises. Students will be doing actual step-by-step, like how to do that. And that will be online and easily they can perform, because GIS online is available, so they don't have to worry about the availability of software.
Nice.
So that's readily and freely available.
Perfect.
So that they get the hang of the knowledge about how to use that software, as well as real world problem solving.
Good.
And then the third objective is to develop their own proposed idea, so that will result into writing a small research article which can be published to a journal or something.
Fabulous. So yes, utilizing software that's already out there and available. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of things that are available to us that people have put a lot of effort into having that we can utilize and be able to leverage for what we can do. And those are great examples. So thank you for that. Especially since that's a concern, right? If we have lab type scenarios, how do we get students to experience labs? I'm working with the geology department currently and how to get what they would normally do right now. So they're contemplating, do we put some rocks together in a kit and have it at the bookstore and send it out? Do we have them spend some field work and videotape themselves searching for different ones that they qualify? It's a process that they're going to have to think through, but that's a real life problem in teaching online that we don't want to give up. There's things such as simulation software for certain things like rocks and that kind of stuff, but we still want real life experiences, right? We don't, in nursing they have simulation software, but you still got to stick someone with a needle at some point. So, and that some of us faint when it happens, but not quite that bad. So yes, and then again, you're getting your students to do the buy-in, right? You're getting the discussions, you're getting have them put in some information, write research articles. You want your students to feel like they're part of the process in the online because we want them to have community. We want them to have value in their learning still. This is, again, not send out a video, take a test. We are having actively engaged activities. Okay, anybody else? Thank you for those examples. If anyone feels free at the end, we can share some more. But again, and that's where assessments come in. There is sometimes thoughts about testing in the online environment, correct? That's a whole nother process. On September 29th, we're going to have a PDS that will cover thoughts on and options for online testing. So if that's something you're interested in, you're welcome to come to that one as well. Okay, so one of the things that you can do when you're having to get into your courses for your students, again, it's all about being able to have them find it. So how do we distribute the information? On your sheets next to it is the content, slides, materials, information. So I want you real quickly to think about, how do they get that information? Is it a book? Is it a PowerPoint? Is it a video? What is it that they have to have, and how does that work in an online environment for you to be able to get that information to your students? So I'm going to give you another couple minutes to just go ahead and write in the sheet of paper what it is that they would have to have. Okay, so who would like to share what some of the content that you need to put out there and in what format? Anyone have any examples?
Well, I probably do overkill. But, I mean, to me, we still have we have books associated with our courses, our online courses, so there'll be readings from that. Also, other resources that are pulled from the web and centralized, faculty centralized or student centralized, depending on how you set up the assignment. Faculty notes, you know, kind of cliff note kind of stuff, outlines, you know, not really, well, I guess it is kind of a lecture outline. Mm-hmm. We use a lot of case studies, situational stuff, either paper pencil type or simulation software type. Okay. And then also our students being in nursing, graduate nursing, then they also have clinical experiences. So they actually are out in the clinics working, and they it's required for them to pull that information into the course to do some of the assignments.
Fabulous.
So yeah.
Do they do some kind of journaling at that point while they're out there in the?
Not journaling is the way you would think of journaling, but they do profile. They see patients, and so they do profile patients and make notes about patients. And
so that's between you and them, not between each other.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Perfect. So yes, and that's great, right? So they have textbooks. They're going to be reading stuff. We can take a look and see if some of the stuff is available electronically. Those are now options. Some of us still like to learn with paper though, right? So they can order the book. I prefer to order a book, highlight, right? I'm old school. That's how I work. But my daughter can read a book on an iPad all day long. You know, good for them. So it's nice that we have those options, right? So everybody can kind of get the information the way they want to have it. Being able to put up lecture notes, those are great as well. And they said the more ways we can put up information in multiple ways and access it to how they learn best, that's great. One of the things, again, this is where we really want to start thinking about the ADA compliancy stuff. So I have a video here that I'm just going to show as an example. Hopefully it won't blow us away.
Hello and welcome to the College of Liberal Arts Distance Education Workshop Series. As you can see, this is the homepage to our course, and the page is listed our modules and our information. Where you can see the modules is over here on the left, and when you click on that, it brings up the different modules that you have available to.
Okay, so we can do, who would have opted to do some self-recordings from lectures? Anybody? Some of you? Mm-hmm. That's an option, right? We can record PowerPoints, we can record screens, we can do all of that. How many of you have sat through an hour-long recorded lecture? Yeah. Tell me how that went.
Rewind, play again, because you drifted.
Yes. Thank you. That's exactly it. This will be more, I have another slide coming up, but we're going to jump into it right now because this is my big aha moment, right? We as humans only can manage to focus on something we're watching for 7 to 10 minutes at best. The next generation, 3 to 5. So we threw up an hour-long lecture that we've recorded. There's a lot of time involved for them to go back and forth, rewind, watch again, write a note, take a time. So what's the answer to that? What do we have to do? short snippets. The other option to that too is, since we have ADA, we want to make sure that those don't just have audio, but we can start looking at captioning them. So that if someone is hearing impaired, they can read that, right? And with short snippets, those are easier. One of the things you can do is, if you write a transcript out, which I do recommend because sometimes I am known to ramble, and all of a sudden I'm off topic, and 7 minutes later it's like, oops, I meant to talk about this, but I got really excited, so I talked about all of this. So if I script it out, I have an idea, right? So even if at that point it's not exactly word for word, that's a really good start to your students being able to put that up and say a readable PDF, that a screen reader could read that out to them and they would see that. So if you're demonstrating a lab example, they would still have that. They could see a visual, they could read that. That's at least a really good start. It's not as perfect as a complete captioning option. The Office of Accessibility can help with captioning videos out for the classes. That is an option. I highly recommend it if it's going to be. And eventually, here's what's going to happen. We are going to have 501 compliancing coming down from federal. It will be that all online courses at universities have to comply. It is coming. It is not here yet, but it's in the works. So if we can do it up front and they come and go, look, have you guys done this? Yes, we have. Ha-ha. So head of the curve is always better, right? So, but yeah, so there's a little video. It has some audio. It demonstrates what it is I want them to see. We have lots of options for this. Okay, so student expectations. You really want to scrutinize what's most important for them to know, because we love what we're talking about. There's so much space in the online, and we can put up so much information, and we did so. And they don't have time, and it's too much, and we've overwhelmed them. And so we really have to look at what's most important. If we want to put other information up, here's extra resources for those of you that want more or need more. That's great, but we don't want to shove 20 texts down their throats and say, hey, read all this, because you can. So you have to look at how you manage the course now. How much reading do you have? And if you're going to supplement and take some of those readings out and put in the web links, which are great examples. There's so many options, right? There's Khan Academy, there's TED Talks, there's some of the courses are in iTunes U, and you can send them out to those. There is a vast array of fabulous resources where you don't have to do all that work all over again. You just tap into that, link it in, pull it in. Now, key for that is we have to make sure it's updated, right? We don't want to have dead links and students going places and getting frustrated and sending out 100 emails going, this didn't work. So we want to make sure we have that. And we want to make sure that they know everything that they're going to do right up front in a welcome page. Like I said, welcome to the course. This is what you're expected to do. You're expected to read. You're expected to post a discussion. You're expected to do a lab experiment. And this is how you do it. Because they're not going to have that face-to-face time with us, right? They're not going to get that initial feedback or stop after class or those kind of things. We want to give them as much information up front to eliminate as much confusion as possible so they're comfortable coming into the course. If they feel overwhelmed in the beginning, even if they step into it, they're going to feel overwhelmed all the way through. So we want to make that a nice process. How many of you felt very overwhelmed the first time you stepped into an online class and took your course? Was it easy to navigate right away and find out where you were going and where you needed to find all this stuff? How much difference would it have made had the instructor done a little video for 3 minutes explaining exactly how to get through that course? Right? And that's all sometimes it takes. And they go, oh. The other thing we want to do is when we put all of it in a syllabus. In an online learning environment, that's very much like a contract. We're letting them know this is what's expected of you, this is where you find it, and they can revert back to that anytime they have a question, 3 a.m. I want to know, because that's when they're going to do their homework, right? That's when they do it. And they don't have to, you're not there, you're sleeping, because that's when most of us sleep as adults. Not all of us, but sometimes I'm up at 3 a.m., but I'm probably not going to answer an email. They can revert back to a syllabus and go, look, it's in here. She spelled it out. My discussion posts have to contain this, this, and this. There's a netiquette. There's some resources. We have resource links that we can do writing tutoring centers, all these different things that have different hours and different accessibility that they can get to what they need.
So when it comes to being available for your students, does Canvas have some kind of way that you can hold like online office hours so maybe you can be available to chat instantly during these?
Yes. That's a fabulous point. They have live chat, live video chat. big blue button. But unless you really want it.
I just meant holding office hours.
Right, if you want office hours at 3 a.m., you are more than welcome to do that. The next thing about that exact same thing is putting it in your syllabus, your turnaround times. And we're going to get to that right now, actually. So what to put in your syllabus? Turnaround times. I will answer your emails within 24 hours because they're used to instant gratification, right? My daughter is, I sent you a text 3 minutes ago. Why haven't you answered me? Because I'm in a meeting. Or I called you 5 times. Pick up the phone. I'll call you at lunch. You know, and that's their mentality, is everything's accessible all the time, and they've grown up with this. So we have to put the expectation out there and let them know. Whatever turnaround time makes sense for you, you're in control of your class. You get to say, hey, look, no. Some people do put a time frame. I will answer by 5 o'clock on Sunday on the weekends, unless it's in, true emergency, or I will answer every email within 24 to 36 hours, or whatever makes sense for you. Some say every night by 9 p.m. It just depends what turnaround time makes sense for you, how many classes you have, how many students you have, all of that comes into play. So, and then put your expectations for interactions. So let's say she's going to have a discussion board, and she's going to have them post. Okay, so they all posted. That's great. That's getting information, but they sometimes need to be prompted that a discussion means they have to reply. So we tell them, post, and it depends on what grade level, is it graduate? Undergraduate. Sophomore. So at that point, our expectations might be respond to one other post. And so we give them time frames. Do an initial post. Everything online is supposed to be flexible, right? So we have posts open for a certain amount of time usually. So do an initial post between Sunday and Wednesday, because you have the content they need to get, right? Videos, they have to read, they have to practice some stuff, whatever it is they need to do. And then Wednesday through Saturday, respond. Now what does respond mean? We're going to give them some netiquette. We're going to say a significant response does not mean, yes, I agree. Because at that point they responded, but it has to have some information behind it, some logical points, those kind of things. Now if it's a graduate level, say it's a graduate nursing level, that would probably be respond to 2 posts and keep the discussion going. Often in a graduate level, they will keep going once the discussion's over. They will keep talking about something because they're excited.
I just thought of something. Do we assume that since it's online, that it's a 7-day-a-week schedule?
Yes. Yes.
It's not confined to the more traditional time frame of assignments coming in on Monday through Friday.
Right. You do not have to adhere to that. You also don't want to think of it as every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. I need this. Because again, it's a more flexible. So let's say we have a test. And normally in a face-to-face class, a test might be Friday at our 10 a.m. class. Well, in an online environment, the test is going to be open for that whole week. Monday through Friday if you want it to be for that week, or Monday through Sunday, depending on maybe they have a week-long job and they aren't going to get to it till the weekend. Online learning definitely has that. Or maybe they have daycare during the week and they work full on the weekend and that's it. That's all they can do is during that time. So now we can confine that.
That raises the issue, when you mentioned about the exam, that raises the issue about a proctor.
Yes, and that's September 29th if you want to discuss proctoring and all of that. That's that discussion, because that is a whole nother hour and a half.
And do we have some campus support online on the weekends?
There is. There is.
The help desk is open all weekend.
Yes.
All 24 hours.
So, and the help desk is a phenomenal resource. Send your students there. You're the first line of defense because you're who they know. And they're comfortable with you and they're going to assume we know all, right? And you might be like, well, okay, just do this and this and solve it. But otherwise, if it's outside that realm, just go get a hold of the help desk. They can help you.
Well, the help desk referred me to the Canvas online folks who were not, Canvas wasn't until 6:45 in the morning. So that pretty much lets out night shift.
Yeah, some of that, but they'll know stuff too that they can answer. So if it's serious, then yes. If it has to go to Canvas, then that's a daytime specialty thing. But most of it doesn't. a lot of it will be like, what browser are you using if you can't watch a video? What, you know, have you updated lately? Those kind of things. A lot of that can be. And that's another thing that you put in your expectations, right? You let them know you need to have an updated computer that can run this, 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 and this. And you can even work with, you know, an OIT person if you want to get really high-end specifics if you want to get that far. That's up to you. And again, that comes in for your expectation for assignments, right? How do you want them to be able to do that? Are you required to have Word? Do you want all your assignments to come in that way? So all my students have to have Word or PowerPoint, or do you accept the open office options that are out there? Or, you know, do you need to put in there that, okay, we're a very Mac-heavy university. They might do them in Keynote. Do you have the means to open Keynote? Possibly not. At that point, you'd have to say, or Pages. Pages is the equivalent of Word. So you would say, please export all Pages documents into a Word format, because that can be done. That might be something we as instructors need to know, right? That way we can talk them through that, because they're going to send you a Pages document, and you're going to go, I can't open that. But there is a simple fix. But a lot of times they don't understand. It needs to be exported as a Word document and sent to me in that format. The other thing for expectation of assignments are, again, due dates. Your due date is, I need my paper by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. or the GIS lab summary has to be completed by Friday at. So they have a time frame, but there are due dates. It's not free and open. It's not a free-for-all for the whole semester. They are following along on a schedule, just like they would in a face-to-face. It's just a slightly more flexible schedule. There's a few more days involved instead of 10 a.m., 10 a.m., 10 a.m. You also want to make sure you tell them how points are awarded in grade breakdowns, because Canvas can do interesting things and they can start to go, whoa, what is that? That's not how I thought it was. And you go, okay, don't panic. This is what it says over here. You'll get this, and those kind of things. And then how quizzes and tests will be taken. The proctoring, September 29th, same time, same place, same bat cave. Include a tentative schedule, so that they have an idea of what's coming. Now, we say tentative so that they know that it might change, things might come up, so they're not going to go, well, you said. Yes, but it says tentative. So we still, like I said, we want to keep on a flow, right? We want to keep them, everybody discusses this topic for this time. That way everybody's on the same page, and then we're going to move on. Like you said, they continue to talk. That's great. Go ahead. Keep talking. One of the other things you can do is have an area for discussion as a back channel. So if they have questions for each other, they're welcome to ask each other those questions that they can answer for each other at 3 a.m. that you don't have to. That works fabulous in math and stats classes, because a lot of times they can do that. We've had a lot of success with that. Okay, so when you get ready to plan this out, we just take a look at are our materials current, because this is a good chance to do that. We don't always have time to sit down and look at what we've been using, and we have to reinvent this class anyway, so why not? And we talked about the electronic formats and the supplemental materials, so we'll skip over those. Okay, so before you're comfortable to sit down and build, you want to be completely comfortable with whatever LMS system you end up using, whether it's Blackboard or Canvas or Desire to Learn or Moodle, whatever it is, you need to be comfortable with it, because you can't handle what your students have questions as, or being able to manage the course and the information that you have and what they give you if you're not comfortable. Now, there's all kinds of online tutorials. There are some wonderful experts on campus. There are different things that you can do. The next thing you want to do when you start to plan your course out is we want to think things in modules. How many of you had your online classes in modules? Okay. So, and you have academic freedom. You're not stuck. We are not University of Phoenix. There's not a template. We're not going to give it to you and tell you how to teach that way, and that's a fabulous thing. However, you have to plan out your process then too, right? So I have instructors that do this by chapters, by certain topics, by weeks, by test sections. So if it's chapters, it might be 4 weeks is one chapter that they're covering, right? Depending on how in depth. If it's topics, it might be a 2-week. As long as everything is sequential and you have dates that make sense to your students, that's okay. They just have to know that going in. If it's, the most common is weeks, of course, like a Sunday through a Saturday is your most common week for setting stuff out in a module, but it doesn't have to be that way. I have one instructor that does it. They have 4 tests in a semester, and the entire module breaks down until they take that test. That is totally up to you. Whatever makes sense and works for you is great. Just make sure that that makes sense to your students, and you'll be fine. Okay, so Canvas. I'm just going to show you real quick. How many of you have been in our Canvas? So as you can see, that's how modules look, right? So, and you can include anything in your module that you need them to have access to. So I have an introduction, so I just made a page, and it tells them a little bit about what this module is about and what I'm expecting them to be able to do. After that, I have a link that they're going to go out and read some information, and then I have a sample page. Here's a PDF, which I would make sure is a readable PDF. And then there's the assignment at the end that I expect them to be able to do. And I've linked everything back to this one module so that they can come here every time and know exactly what order I need them to access the information and expect them to get the work done. But that doesn't mean that this stuff isn't still over here, and it's still accessible. And if they want to jump in here and they go, okay, I know my discussion is due this date, and they come over here and click on discussions and go in and do that, that's great. But I'm making sure that I've explained how I have them go through this course.
On average, how many modules do you generally have in a course? I mean, obviously too many gets out of control, then too few, but you got to cover information.
Right. Again, that's kind of how when you start planning it out. So if you wanted it weekly, and that's a module, and you have 15 modules, that's okay. And that could be however much information. If you have several major topics in your course, and let's say you have 8 topics that are your major topics for the course, you could build 8 modules. It depends on what makes the most sense for your class. And how much information you put into each module is going to come down to your blueprint. So how much time does it take to be able to do all of this? And have I given them too much information? This is to help you take a look at what it is you're putting in your course, because we can easily start to overwhelm our students. Because again, we love this information, right? I mean, how can they not love this information? So we want you to have it all. Wait, I can't give you it all. So breaking it down, giving them what they need and taking a look and go, is this too much information, or is this not enough information? Have I not given them what they need to successfully complete this in a way that makes sense? That's what your blueprint is for. But your modules, like I said, most common is 1 module per week, but not everybody does it that way. And then putting in the information in the module in a way that it makes sense. Everything needs to come in order, because that's how we read a book, right?
And then how do you equate hours of work or expected hours of work relative to like credit hours for the course? So 3 credit hour course equivalent, how much time should they be spending on these modules if you're doing 15?
So you would equate that back to much like it would be in the face-to-face, right? So if you have 3 hours of lecture each week, then you're having them touch base with information for about 3 hours. So if that equivalates to they're watching a lecture, they're reading a website, they're required to read part of the book, that can total out to be your 3 hours. And then you would expect your homework to be about the same amount of time that they would normally do. So if you're expecting that you would do this project, and that's the project you normally do, and you can equivalate that over and it works in the online environment, that's great. So if they write a paper, and that's what they always do, then you can still have them write that paper. That assignment is still okay. But you don't want to suddenly go, oh, I can give them 20 links and they can read this chapter and they can watch my videos, and suddenly you've given them 15 hours of what would equivalent to be a 3-hour lecture. There's no way for them to manage that. And again, like I said, it's easy to do because we get really excited. There's suddenly this wealth of information that are at their fingertips that we can give them. But we really need to take a look at, okay, so I've asked them to touch base with information for approximately 3 hours this week. That's where I need to stop. Because we don't want it to be a negative experience for them, because online learning can do fabulous things. It can catch people who might not otherwise have successfully made it, because learning in a lecture-based is really one specific type of learning, right? So we succeed at that, but not everybody succeeds at that kind of learning. So this is a way to reach some of those that can't succeed that way, but we don't want to overwhelm them to the point that it's a negative experience and they're still going to keep going out the door.
So it was a 3-hour course, and you would include 3 hours worth of the modules and 3 hours of homework.
If that's what you would do in a normal face-to-face class, if that's the kind of work that they would do, if they would have 3 hours worth of homework outside of your 3 hours worth of lecture, that's exactly the equivalent. Again, it depends on the level, of course, right? So if you have freshmen, the homework is, is a little bit different than a graduate level, than an upperclassman. So you have to take a look at how much work you're getting from your students now and equivalent that into that online experience, because we can suddenly quadruple that easily in an online, and then we don't understand why they're so overwhelmed and so frustrated. So let's say, we're watching a couple videos, we're reading a chapter, we've looked at a couple links, or there's an article, a case study that we've had them read. If that's suddenly 10 hours of what would be equivalent of lecture time, and there's still homework on top of that, that's a very overwhelming scenario. That's not a successful, that's just too much for them. As a graduate student, I would be going, phew, that's a lot. But, so that's just, and that's where that time comes in. We really want to be cognizant of what that time equals out to be, and we want to be as accurate as possible. So yeah, time is a huge concern, and we do want to be very careful with that. And if you want to ever sit down and take a look at what you have and where you need to go, I can do one-on-one consultations. And we can sit down and kind of mull our way through that. You don't have to go through that alone. And again, we have different options for this, right? Panopto can record things. There are e-portfolios that you can have them build. And there's all kinds of things that you can take a look at through the IMG website. And I do recommend that you utilize IMG as a resource. They're a great group of people that can help you learn all kinds of fabulous things. Especially Canvas. They are experts.
So you mentioned earlier that you recommend making it so that everyone in the course still has the same due dates, even if it's like a due date time frame. So like the test is due this week, everyone has the same due date. So would you definitely recommend against having some other format where they work at their own paces then?
I highly recommend against it.
My first contact with online courses was like that, but I think it was easier on the teacher because it was mostly bunch of online quizzes that they didn't score. So once I got through with the first module, I could unlock the second one. And there was still an absolute deadline, so you couldn't spend the entire semester on the first module.
Right. I highly recommend against that, mainly because we're trying to build an online learning community with these students. We want them, discussion boards are impossible if someone's up here and someone's down here. They aren't able to engage with each other in any meaningful way if nobody's on the same page. It also means that we are giving feedback in a meaningful way because everybody's on the same page. So it's not over here and then over here and not over here. We're not all over the map as well. We really want to get away. That's much more of that correspondence type scenario, right? I'm learning on my own and I just get some quizzes and I get some grades and I move on. What we want them to do is to understand that they're part of a class, that they can talk to each other, and that they can talk to you. So and actually, that's coming up. So quickly, does anyone here need to propose an online class? No? Okay, we'll skip this information. If anyone needs to actually go through the process of proposing an online class on campus, that's something I can sit down and help you with. But since nobody here needs to, we're going to skip that. Okay, so because this is the next one that we're talking about right here. So it's an interactive space. It allows us to put content out there, and we want the students to interact with the content, but not just with the content, which is that model that she's discussing, right? We want them to interact with each other as students, and we want to interact with us as an instructor and us back. So we want to give feedback, we want to give comments. So if everybody's in a discussion board, and we can jump in and say, hey, look, that's great. You guys had some great thoughts, but we're kind of off topic and we need to steer this way. If everybody's in that model, we can do that. If they're not, then there's not a lot of participation going on. So group activities. So what were some of the group activities that you did?
Discussions, papers, presentations, all kind, everything is a group activity.
Really?
Well, not group, but it felt like it. A lot of group work.
That's nice, because again, that can be difficult to do in an online.
I'll be the only person who admits that discussion boards don't really fit for me.
Same here. When I meant discussion, I meant like writing the discussion section of the APA paper. But like I don't like the discussion board things. They've almost never worked for me when I've been in an online course. It's like everyone ends up posting the same answer to the question, and then like somebody will post some meaningless reply just because they're required to. And it's just difficult to facilitate actual discussion. I've never really seen it happen.
And I would comment to that. The most meaningful discussions in the courses I taught and with the courses I was in were ones where you took your actual practice. And in nursing, I guess that's a little easier to do, but you say how you're doing it in your environment, what the evidence says, and then others can discuss how it's being done in their environment, what change they'd like to see. So the more meaningful ones were the ones where the students brought in what's actually happening, and then they were able to talk about that.
Okay.
But I've been in some awful ones too.
Right, where people just answer a question about an article.
Right.
Right, you're right, and that's it. And some classes lend themselves better than others. I mean, a stats class might not have a lot of discussion going on, and that's okay, because it's not going to be right for everybody. That's the nice thing about, again, academic freedom, right? We get to choose what works for us, which is nice, instead of, well, you have to have a discussion. Well, great, because again, it might not work. Now, again, there's some areas that really lend themselves well to being able to do a discussion. There are some theoretical courses. There's religion and those kind of things and stuff you can really get into. And there's practices, things I've learned, things I've done. So if I'm in an educational class, I can talk about what works well in my educational settings, and someone else can share. So if I'm in a class with someone I've been in class with people from Japan and Canada, and I can learn a lot about their environments, and that's really exciting to me. But it's right, it's not responding to an article. I'm responding to experiences.
I just thought, what about the protection of that information? Is that public information? Because we're talking confidentiality of patient situations.
If it's patient situations, my understanding is as long as there are no names involved and it's inside, because your course is password protected and it is only the students that are in that class. No one else has access to that information. Now, they can't share names, and they probably can't even share a specific hospital.
And it can't be hacked into where the information gets out.
No.
You don't want any identifying factors, and usually it'll say in the syllabus, in discussions, please do not use any identifying factors.
Yes. I say, because I have had nurse. I used to work for South Dakota State University, which has a fabulous nursing program, much like here, thankfully. And they would do some of pieces of the journaling could be pulled out and used as a discussion board, but it couldn't be the entire journal, because there's more that you need to reflect on as the instructor and be able to see but they would pull out, again, pieces. So there are. Or you could share an example of something that happened, and you can remove the identifying factors if it comes in a specific journal, and then you can post that and say, okay, so how would you handle this? Or what did you experience? And then they're replying to the situation and not posting specific information. So there's some of that, but you're right, you have to be careful. You never want to put anything out that's HIPAA or FERPA that's in there, but you are protected by your password protected environment to some extent. But it's something to definitely be cognizant about, because again, even in a discussion, right, we want to make sure that they're following not only netiquette, because if they're younger students, it's LOL, BTW, OMG, and you're going, nope, sorry, this is classwork. So we spell up front. You need to write out grammatically correct sentences, please. Then we also have to spell out that it has to follow some kind of respectful exchange. So you can disagree, please do so respectfully. Don't swear at somebody. If you disagree, explain the reasons why you disagree. So, those are some thoughts on that. And you, like I said, you can do projects, you can do activities that are group, that you can get them to do. There's pages inside Canvas where they can come in and you can add everybody to a page and they can add information. That's something that can be done, so that's really great. Okay, so things that we need to consider, right? Students need time to familiarize themselves with online learning. Much like when you jump in and do something right away, okay, they all think they're tech savvy, right up until the point that it's not Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And they, so we want to give them some time. So how do we do that? First week, if it's going to be a discussion board, we say introduce who you are. A, that builds that learning community. They feel like they're part of a group. B, that allows them to do a low stakes, how to use the discussion board, how to reply to each other. Hi, I'm in this course because I want to do some geocaching and I think this is going to be great, or whatever reasons they want to do that. It also takes time for you to set up. So give yourself that time. It takes anywhere from, I recommend a semester, but at least a month. I have had faculty come in before that just found out 2 weeks before they were supposed to teach that they're supposed to teach. It can be done, but if you don't have to, we will help you do that. I've seen it a lot, because not everybody finds out, right? So which pieces correlate well and which ones don't? That's kind of taking a look at what your content is, what information you have, again, what those assignments are, and what technologies can you incorporate. So is there some simulations inside the nursing program? Is there the GIS systems that you can use? Is there a My Math lab that helps with statistics? Those kind of things. You can use those. Pearson does a lot of stuff on campus for people. There's actually an HDFS course that they did a full storybook simulation of the process of life. So depending on which outcomes they chose, their story changed for these students from birth to adulthood, whatever, or adults. And so Pearson built that for them, and they have thousands of options to go in, and they're, okay, you're in jail. And I was like, that's some amazing stuff, because that takes a lot of work to set up. So you do have access to resources that will help you leverage information and do things for you. They have a lot of students rolling through, so the students are paying like a $25 fee to use this. They're obviously making money, but they also built a really great program. So you don't have to do everything alone. There are options. And there are support people here in place for you. And we'll go through those in a minute. So how do you dispense the information to the students? Do you record your class? No. Sometimes you have to, right? That's the option you have. That's the time you have. You can edit that down. You can do that. We don't recommend it. Can you record in your office? Absolutely. Can you record on an iPad while you're traveling through the airport because you need to put something up? Yes, you can. I love technology today. You can also record with our media specialist back there, Mr. Roland DeWitt. He will actually offer you 4 hours of recording per course that you can utilize. So if there's a nursing simulation that you want to have demonstrated, and you have the nursing dummy, and that's not online. If you want to record that and get 4 hours of recording that for a lab to put in for an online class, you can do that. If you want to follow some students actually doing GIS work and finding their way through something, and you want to record that, you can. Is there anybody else who has some kind of lab work that might want to record?
Right now this class isn't online, but if it ever was, I'm in hospitality, and the class I'm teaching now is food production, and there's a whole lab component where I work with the chef from the hotel, where they're cooking every week. And so that, I could see where it could be a lot like an online course where they actually do it and record themselves doing these activities. The only problem would be the whole tasting aspect of the course. But,
Well, you can make them find people who taste it. There are kind of like an online speech class, right? They don't have a class to do it in from. They have to go find an audience, and they have to tape record their audience while they're doing it so they can see what the reaction are to the speech. It can be done. So they find a panel, they blindfold them, they feed them, and you get to see the reaction. Because you can't hide that, right? If something tastes bad, you're going to go, yeah. There's no getting around that. So that can work. That can work. And if it's something you want to demonstrate in that kitchen, that you want to put that video up so that they mimic those actions, that can be done. Again, 4 hours, or you can have him show you how to do some of the work. And you can, there are cameras that can do fabulous things that you guys can have on your own that you don't, So definitely consult with our media specialist. And how do you build that information out? Again, if you have a script, if you have information that you put out in lecture notes, put them up in readable PDFs. Link to articles that are out there so that those resources are there. And someone had mentioned having students put in information. Yeah, so students can actually start to build their own resources and their own information. That's a fabulous way to feel like they are buying into their own learning experience, right? How awesome is that? Okay, so we talked about breaking down guest lectures, and is another way. So if you have someone who's coming in and you want to be able to record their expertise, that's something you can do, and that can be included in an online session. Again, our media specialist can help you with that. And we talked about capturing the actual demonstrations. Now, how many of you have thoughts about synchronous versus asynchronous?
I think there's pros and cons to both.
It's just hard to coordinate.
So your thoughts on?
Well, to me, I think asynchronous is easier because a lot of the students are working full-time, like you say. Some work Monday through Friday, some work shift work 3 to 11, some work 11 or 7 p. to 7. I mean, to find that time to do a synchronous time without them losing some revenue income because they have to be off every Wednesday night from 8 to 10 or whenever you do the class is hard.
Right.
But being synchronous gives you that community sense, I think, that you don't get when you're asynchronous.
Perfect. So you wanted to elaborate on that?
That's my experience. It's just hard, especially we're looking at the nursing aspect of the 12-hour shifts, and our students, we've got an RN to BSN online program starting, so that's why you see us well represented. But
I just proved all those. So
work full time and they have families, and so I did go through a program myself where we did have to be online for 2 hours every other Monday, but they archived the chat so that those that just realistically couldn't be there weren't penalized for it, and they could go back and see the archive. So that was nice.
Perfect.
The best course that I took in graduate school online had both synchronous and asynchronous components, and they did that. So it was a stats course. Ooh, I never thought I would say that was mine.
Yay, stats over there.
She recorded lectures and PowerPoint, and then we had a time where we were all online together, and she kind of walked quickly through any questions, and we discussed any questions. We worked some problems together, and then for those who couldn't, it was
recorded.
Yes, archived. That's the word, archived. Yes.
And you could keep going back to them.
Yeah.
And that does help too, right? So we record information because not everybody learns at the same pace, right? So they can review. One of the things you can do as a go-between between completely asynchronous or synchronous is you can do synchronous in small groups if you absolutely want to do that too, right? So you have them sign up for their own groups. Okay, so this group of 10 is available during this time, and they synchronously meet. You're right, asynchronous is optimal for the learners. Some faculty just aren't ready to make that leap though. They're still sold on that 10 o'clock every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? So that it can be a difficult process for some to work through, but there can be places for both, but asynchronous is definitely much easier for the learner. Okay, so things to remember. You always have to follow copyright while you build your course. So if you're going to put something up from a book that you utilize, make sure your students own a copy of that book. If you're going to put an article up, have them go to it through the library. If you're going to use a website somewhere, link to it. Follow all the copyright rules. If you want to use a video, ask for permission or make them buy it, just like they would a book. We want to be very careful to make sure that copyright is always followed. Placement of your information is key. Where do they find it? Same place, same time, every time they go in. The more we change it up, the more confused they are, the more difficult it is, the frustration goes up, the happier are, the easier it is to learn, right? And the time that's involved for you as well as them. If you have 50 students and you have them write a paper every week, that's a lot of papers, right? So So we want to think about that. Here's your number one. You're going to have some patience. I don't necessarily have a lot of patience sometimes, but there are certain respects in which I have had to learn. I have to have some patience, and that's with my students in their initial confusion when they get in. It's with myself when when it takes a little longer to build something out or think something through. There's a lot of patience that has to be involved in online learning that we weren't necessarily prepared to have to do. And we have to be flexible. So let's say we have, like I said, a group activity. If those students can't get in and they can't do it, what's plan B? How do we make it so they still learn the material and still get the grade they need, right? Because those are the two key pieces. If they can't learn and they can't get a grade, then that's where we've let everybody down, right? So, and consult your peers. Find out what else is going on in your areas. Find out what other universities are doing. There's a whole host of fabulous things going on out there that can be amazing. And that's how we learn too, right? Is I learn by what's going on across the university and other universities, and we're getting there. We're a little behind the curve, but we're very traditional, so that's all right. We're learning from other people's mistakes. So there's nothing wrong with that. Oh, then we had that all not tech. Okay, so here's some resources. This can be emailed out to anybody who wants it. Just make sure you leave me an email if you're building a course. These are the current, and these are things that you would want to utilize if you're ever building an online course for another university. Find out what these resources are at that university. You want to make sure you have online codes of conduct or whatever the student handbook is. You want to make sure that there's Office of Accessibility options so they know how to access that information. We have a writing center so they can get writing tutoring done. Those are things that you want to make sure you know to offer your students because they can't just walk somewhere on campus and get that, right? So we want them to have the best learning experience they can have. Okay, once you build it, they will come, I promise. We all love online learning. You will be surprised, and they won't end up always just being from our university. That's a very common thought process at Auburn right now, is that online learners will be here. Sometimes that's the case. Quite often once we build it, somebody else finds that they need that course, they can transfer it in, they can count it as a credit, they want to take it in the summer, they want to do whatever. This one isn't being offered for another year at my university, I can take it now. You will end up with students across the spectrum. One of the things to think about that is then you have to start thinking about time zones and all those kind of things. Like I said, I had a class with a student who was in Japan. And so, you know, discussion boards became quite interesting at that point. So, and the other thing is maintain its structure. So we want to make sure, the last one there is survey the students, right? We want to find out how this course is going. There's some big mid things for online, kind of, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the SGIF process. The big mid is the online equivalent of that. We also have an online survey that our department can provide you with that you can send out to your students. We recommend that you do those at midterm, right? Get some feedback, find out how the class is going. Students feel like they have some input on how that's all working. However, that flips back to that maintain its structure. Okay, students want the test to be changed to blah, 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 blah. Well, that might be the majority of them, but okay, we don't want to change that up because that's in the schedule, right? And that's set up. So we don't want to switch midstream. That's going to confuse students. It's going to frustrate students. If there's something we can address, we will address it. We will let them know that we're addressing it according to whatever. But the main thing to do at that point is keep a little journal, a little log of how the class is going. And if the students say something that they want changed, make a note. Okay, this is going well, this isn't going well, and these are the changes I would make next time, not in the middle of it. We've had instructors try to do that, but the majority of them will say, they lost me, this was a horrible experience, blah, blah, blah. Even though we think we're making a better change, right? Unfortunately, they don't want change. Okay, so again, building that community, student-to-student interaction, acknowledging trial and error on their part, right? They're gonna screw up. So that first time that they take a quiz online, if you're doing that, make it a low-stakes quiz. Don't make it a do-or-die situation. So if they're struggling on how to do that on their computer, and they're not suddenly going to fail the class now because they couldn't figure it out. And that's something we'll discuss in the September 29th. We won't get into that right now. along with the testing information. We will also save that. Your team is what I wanted to get off of this one. Instructional designer, the technologist. We have a technologist on hand. His name is Paul Springfield, and he can do some amazing things with surveys and information and those kind of things. So if we need to start building some content out and doing those kind of things, we do have a technologist on hand, in addition to myself and Mr. DeWitt. Here's your most important part, right? The whole key of all of this is to engage our students in meaningful ways. Yay! I do love online learning, not gonna lie. If it's done correctly, it can do some absolutely amazing things. So, at this point, we have a few minutes left. Do any of you have any questions, thoughts, things you want to share? Don't everybody speak up at once. Yes, those are yours to keep.
Is there a university that you think is doing it really well and has some online resources we could look at? You mentioned one or two.
I don't know that they'll have resources that you can get to, though. A lot of them are probably going to be behind those password protected. Like I said, I know South Dakota State has a phenomenal online nursing program. South Dakota State University.
South Dakota.
South Dakota?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm Southern.
Oh, so yes, so they have a fabulous online nursing program. Basically, it's cold. Who wants to go there, right? Anyway, and there are some other ones that have. Florida has a great online program in general. They are top of the game. So what they have for resources and how they do stuff is a great group to kind of take a look at. Those would probably be two of my top. There are other ones that come into play, and even like Georgia Tech and those have some really great things that they do. But
I'm a little concerned about, like, sometimes if a student misses a deadline submission or something, they come up with so many excuses, and sometimes they press for it, like they just want, like it's like pestering kind of thing, like they just want to. I always talk about, like, okay, I want to get a good grade at the end, but blah blah blah, this thing happen and goes. So sometimes it gets a little hard to deal with such students.
that is a very good point. And when you have your deadlines, those submissions can close. So when you have an online submission, once you have a deadline date, you can have it where it no longer accepts any submissions after that point. And what you do if they miss that is up to you. If it's points off, if it's they missed the grade, whatever you get to determine. If it's a viable excuse, okay. I mean, I was having gallbladder surgery at one point, and I had to get a hold of my professor and be like, look, I'm going to be out for a couple weeks. You know, that was legit, right? But that's not always the case. There's only so many times that our grandmothers can die.
Yeah.
So,
you can't ask for a proof also.
right.
You can't ask for a proof also.
Yes, you can. You can feel free to what you have, what you're willing to accept as an excuse.
If it is a medical ground, we can ask for a proof or
Mm-hmm.
something. Like, but then
Absolutely. And that's up to you.
If they have technological problems, maybe you could ask them to take a screenshot of it when they're like, oh, such and such didn't work for me. That's at least more than them just saying, oh, my internet didn't work. You could,
Right.
I mean, they could probably still manipulate the images, but I think adding one more layer of accountability there would help. Because there's more excuses in online courses, it seems like.
There can be. There certainly can be. And they can really run into some of these hurdles, right? But that's where, okay, if they have to go into that much work to make that, to do those things, to get those excuses, if they just realize that they had just put that much effort into the actual work,
You've got to know time.
end of the done. But
You also have a bigger window of time for most things. So that's when you have your deadline, but then you have the hard rule deadline. Now, you had all week to turn this in. If you're having computer problems today, that's going to be your issue. You had all week to get this done. So while there are more excuses, there's also a lot more flexibility for them to do the work. So they have to take some personal responsibility for not doing it at the last minute.
Making them accountable for that also.
Right.
Yes, and that's one of the things you put in up front. Make sure you address some of these things at the beginning of the week. That way, if you have questions, you have time to get a hold of me, or and those kind of accountability. That's where we found our learners have to be very accountable for their own learning to some extent, right? We have some issues. Now, there's going to be some legit ones where, okay, the test wouldn't load and those kind of things, but that's something you can take into account. And if it's somebody who's repeatedly doing that, obviously we're going, look, you're not successfully learning in an online environment. Is this not the best scenario for you? You know, those kind of things. But what you take for those as excuses is your right. So if you want to allow late submissions, that's okay. It just depends on what you're determining as your hard and fast deadlines. I know some will say, well, this is the deadline, but they will accept them all the way up to the end of the semester, depending on what those projects are and how it plays into. If it doesn't affect the subsequent projects, then okay, they get some points for that. All right, that's great. But if it's building on it, then how do they build? If they haven't done this one, then they can't get to this one, and they can't get to this one, right? So it depends on the course to some extent. And again, that's one of the things we spell out in the syllabus. You're responsible for having a computer that works. You're responsible for having internet. You signed up for an online course. What's your backup plan if that doesn't happen? We make them think about that up front. Do you have a library? Do you have a friend? Do you have someplace that you can go should you suddenly find yourself with a broken laptop? Those kind of things. And we can use announcements, right? So announcement at the beginning of the week. Remember, you have a test that's due by Friday. This is your warning. Great thoughts. Any other thoughts?
I just have one more question. What's your name again?
I am Betsy Gilbertson, and I can actually put that up right here.
I can. Okay.
There we go. So that's myself, and that's Roland.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, you already have one? Okay.
and we are in the system, so if you search for us through the email, you will find us. Thankfully, those are our real names as they show up. I don't have, it's not Elizabeth or anything crazy like that. Sometimes I do that, right? Like I search for James, and his name is not James, but I don't know that because he goes by James. So I'm really just Betsy, and he is Roland. So you will find us. So yeah. Fabulous. At that point, it is 2 o'clock. Feel free to take some more goodies with you as you head out the door if you want. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
I have a
Thank you very much.
specific question.